kitty. Dusty, everybody. No one will ever figure out where that music's from. Anyways, thanks for joining us today. It is July 26th, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I have Dusty here joining me today. Say hi, everybody. Or say hi, Dusty, rather, I should say. And that, of course, is Daniel in the background, sitting in the other chair like he likes to do. So naturally, we have a few things that we're going to be looking at here today. I see Dragon is here already. Helter, Monkey has joined us this afternoon or this evening or this morning, depending upon where you are in the world, because I do get people chiming in from all over the place. And of course, I read as I go for those of you who are listening and not watching. And Cougar says they made it again. Glad you could make it, Cougar. Thanks for dropping in today. And I'm gonna I'll start off here by affirming a couple of things I talked about yesterday, because yesterday I mentioned a couple of things, and I do like to go back if I remember and show something to validate what I talked about, like I did on Monday here. And Savage says, "Tactical Recon Kitty, awesome. Love your 911s, America." Yeah, just M1911A1 standard military 45 caliber semi-automatic pistol. Fluke Man is here, says hello. I see Lady is here. You got I got ads? Yeah, we'll see how long that lasts before I get a yellow warning. Again, here is little Dusty, who stays kitten size for the rest of her life, I guess. She's a pretty small cat, actually. Very friendly animal. Very easy to manage, as is her brother Daniel, who is sitting in the chair back there. And where I'm going to start, actually, is I had brought this up yesterday. I'm going to see if I can pull something up on this. And that is when we were talking about the Barbie movie. You remember, we talked about how Ken used to be a masculine character in Mattel in the 60s and 70s. And in the 80s, they were emphasizing more on Barbie can do anything, and Ken didn't have too much to do. But in the 60s and 70s, Ken had plenty to do. And I'll just pull this up really quick, because nothing will emphasize that more than this image if I can find it. Because, you know, Ken used to have, here we go. I'll pull that picture up for those of you who can see. And this is Ken's original hunting outfit from the 1960s. And there it is. And you see he's got a hunting shirt, a red cap, and a shotgun. He's got a shotgun there. Back when Barbies and Kens could come with guns. And of course, that was again in the 1960s. So there is Ken's hunting outfit. And there's a boxed version that has additional accessories. That's the hang tab version that comes with like the little coat hanger that you could repurpose for the shirt. I see Savage Lee says, "Nice cat. I have 3 myself." Now we have 4 in the house and 8 out back. So we're taking care of a lot of babies right now, so to say. Preparedness has made it, says hello. Thanks for joining us today, Preparedness. But yeah, just showing that once upon a time, Ken was masculine. Ken was not portrayed. Ken was Barbie's boyfriend, and he was no pushover, as you can see here. He was ready with his 12-gauge pump action shotgun for duck hunting or home defense. So, but Mattel has moved away from that. They started moving away from it in the mid to late 80s until they ended up where they are today. We'll take one more look at Dusty. Hello, dear. And then I'll go ahead and put her down so that I can navigate this a little bit better. and she may stay and she may not. So another affirming topic, something else that I wanted to pull up here that I talked about yesterday, and I wanted to add some validity to, because I do try to know what I'm talking about. You know, I don't just pull stuff out of a hat. What is it? What do they say? Jack of all trades, master of none. I know I know a little about a lot and a lot about a little, and I remember snippets and things and this and that because I don't have a script. I'm not reading off a teleprompter or anything, but I remember things. And if I can remember the next day or the next week, I'll go back and pull it up. And this is about organ transplants. Michael Scott has joined us. Says, "Hey, brother, thanks for joining us today, Michael. What I was talking about yesterday with organ transplants, and I want to share this so that I can give you an example of what I was talking about. And for an example, because I said when you get an organ transplant, because it's such a scam, the whole concept of getting an organ transplant. They take it from people for free because you can't sell them. They take an organ from donors from car accidents or from whatever. Hey, donate your spare kidney. You were born with two. You don't have a spare. You have two for a reason. So they take an organ, they get donated. They basically sell it. It costs a fortune to do the surgery. And your body, from the instant it's put in, rejects the organ for life, however long that life is, which isn't that long. And I'm going to show you here what I'm talking about. I got this pulled up on the page. Focus is here. It says, hello, sounds like they made everything diluted and lollipop and introduced the metrosexual culture. Yeah, because he used to, Ken was masculine. If you were a boy, you could have played with a Ken because they had stuff that would have accommodated that. Nowadays, forget it. So where are we? Life expectancy heart transplant. The average or suggested average is 9.16. So the best you can hope for, unless something miraculous happens, is 9 years after a heart transplant. And liver transplant looks about the same. Kidney transplant is a little bit better, but we're looking at heart here. Average, let me see, survival rates for heart transplant patients are as follows. 1 year, 75%. So 25% of people who receive the transplant are not going to survive this. And that is people who survive the surgery, by the way, because a lot of them don't survive the surgery. But if you survive the surgery, 25% are dead in a year. 5 years, 64%. Now, it's important to point out that this is a shifting percentage. So it's not 64% from 100. It's 64 of the 75%. So 75% becomes the new 100%. Okay, so after a year, 25% on average will die if they survive the surgery. So that 75 becomes 100 again. 5 years becomes 64% of that. So between the 1 to 5 year mark, 36% of the 100% 1 year survivors will have met their demise. And then 10 years, 53%. So 53% of the surviving 64 will die within 10 years after that, as you follow along here. Because like I said, it's a shifting percentage table. And you can see it actually on the graph here when they reset it, and it drops and drops and drops. But the best you can hope for is 9.6 or 9.16, even though it is possible to last 15 or 20. And I guess that depends on how young you are and how well you stay on top of your medication. And I just wanted to point that out. And I've got another thing I'm going to show here to clarify on some of what I was talking about with organ transplants yesterday. Bingo says, look at the notification was only 10 minutes late today. Oh, only 10 minutes late. And, I set that up early. I set that up at like 7 in the morning, You know, there's no excuse for it because I'm up early. You know, my wife and I are up early in the day. Bams says, I don't want to be the crazy conspiracy theorist. Let me pull that up so you can see it. But that sounds like if you go to the doctor, you will suffer and die. Pretty much. Again, it's not healthcare. Healthcare is an oxymoron. It's health repair. When you're at the point of the doctor or the hospital, it's not care anymore. It's repair. Healthcare is taking care of your body. Healthcare is eating healthy. Healthcare is avoiding chemicals, is not becoming an addict, is exercising every day, living your best life realistically, not overindulging. Let me see. Monkey says, I got my 30 minutes before stream and got the live notification right on the 2 p.m. start. Wow. Unbelievable. Now, further emphasizing on what I'm talking about right here, I've covered this. I assume everybody kind of understands what I'm talking about. And again, you can look this up for yourself and see this data for yourself. Now, because of the constant rejection, okay, again, unless you have a perfect identical twin, because identical twins will have the same DNA matching. If there's a hair off on DNA matching, your body will reject the organ and your immune system will attack it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for the rest of your life. This is really the reason why these people don't last very long, is their body is constantly trying to kill the new organ. It thinks it's something invading the body. It's foreign, doesn't belong here. Your body tries to kill it. So you have to take immunosuppressants. So between your body exhausting itself, trying to fight the organ constantly and heal the organ constantly at the same time, because your body is confused, the immunosuppressant drugs that you take, of which there are many, and I'm going to pull that up here in a second, you're tired all the time, you're sick all the time, you don't really have a good quality of life. Plus, between the expenses of the surgery and the cost of these medications, then the expense is insane. Now let me pull this up here, and I should probably be citing where I'm pulling these things up. Bams says practicing medicine. Yeah. And then preparedness says doctor's tagline. Just remember, folks, there's a pill for that. Indeed. Indeed. Now, this is National Kidney Foundation here, and I'm going to jump ahead through some of their stuff here. If I can find the right spot that I'm looking for. Yeah, what are immunosuppressants used for? When you get a kidney transplant, again, this is the National Kidney Foundation's website. When you get a kidney transplant, your body knows the new kidney is foreign, that it's not originally part of your body. Your body will attack the new kidney and try to damage or destroy it. The immunosuppressant drugs suppress your body's ability to do this. The goal is to adjust the drugs to prevent rejection and minimize the side effects. Does everyone who gets, okay, let me see here. It goes on, does everyone who gets a new kidney have to take immunosuppressants? And they explain here what I said. If your kidney came from an identical twin, no. However, everyone else, even if, and this is the key, even missing a single dose may make it more likely for you to have a rejection. The only time you should skip a dose is if your doctor or other healthcare team members tell you to do so. If you're not sure, call your doctor. Let me see, when you have a clinical visit, you should not take your immunosuppressant medicines until your blood is drawn for lab work. And because of the large numbers of pills you may need to take each day, forgetting a dose is easy to do. And then they have some things to help you to remember. But literally, the Kidney Foundation warns you, even missing a single dose could cause you to lose that organ. And again, you'll be taking a large number of pills every day. And that stuff's not free and it's not cheap. So to stay alive, you have to take it. It makes you sick and weak and tired and dizzy all day. It's terrible. It's a terrible system. Cougar says, how can a person actually trust any doctor or hospitals anymore? Or I guess you mean or hospitals anymore with all the evidence of checking out patients permanently for big dollars and risk of getting a snuck in CV without you knowing. People do. People go to the hospital all the time. They go to the hospital, they go to the doctor, they trust them because we live under a system where this is supposed to be a trustworthy person. Oh, a doctor, a nurse, they wouldn't hurt you. A surgeon wouldn't hurt you. They took an oath. They took a Hippocratic oath to do no harm. That's cute. Again, it's only as good as the person who took it. I don't trust these people at all. Savage says they say and would appear that it's just a world of suffering and pain. Torture has been used to describe the anguish. Almost feel sorry for the degenerate bastards, but not really. Yeah, and but people are afraid to die, and they will suffer through all that surgery, the incredible expense, the feeling weak and tired and sick every day, and too sick to do everything. And you see these commercials about, enjoy your quality of life, the medication commercials. Are you really? I've seen people that are on medications like this who are just listless. They look miserable. They're sick all the time. Especially if you're taking immunosuppressants, not only does it block your body's ability to attack the organ, it blocks your body's ability to attack anything. So you catch a cold, you could have it for months. You suffer with it. Fluke says, what do you think of the national health care what do you think of national health care to what it is now in America? I don't trust the healthcare system at all. I don't trust it at all. It's completely financial. The people who get involved with it, very few of them really, I mean, you ask any doctor or nurse and they're going to tell you, oh, I want to help people. No, you don't. You chose that profession because it paid well. And now you're stuck with it and you probably hate it too. And then you project that on everybody. Almost every nurse I've ever had to work with in the mental health facility, when I worked with juvenile justice, all of that, school nurses, school nurses are the most useless nurses ever. They can't actually technically do anything. I don't know why they even have a school nurse. They're not allowed to do anything. They hate their jobs. They're rude to people. They have terrible bedside manners. They paid to get into that profession. They took the classes and they're in too deep. They don't want to start something new. So they just keep at it even though they hate it. And the fact that they hate it projects on everyone. And Loyal says they were taught medicine in the Jesuit universities. And Zane is here, says, what's new? Thanks for joining us today, Zane. We're just talking about some things that came up yesterday about organ transplants and immunosuppressants and the idea of life expectancy and the realistic view of life expectancy versus what people think. I'm just going to get a liver transplant and everything will be peachy tomorrow. No, you probably won't even last 5 years after a liver transplant. And it's going to be a miserable, difficult 5 years because of all the drugs you have to take to keep that organ alive. It's terrible. Because Slinka says school nurses were giving the sticky stabby where I live. Really? Because every time I ever had to deal with a new school nurse, the objective was, I can't do that. I can't, I'm not allowed to do this. I can't do that. There's always a million excuses. That's interesting. They probably allowed that because of trying to push that agenda. Zane says, I'm very pro 3D printing organs. And it can be done. They've been working on that. They've been working on the idea of 3D printing organs, but there's no money in that because then your body wouldn't reject it and you wouldn't need to take all those drugs and you might live longer than 1 to 5 years. Or as we saw here on the thing that I pulled up, the prompt that I pulled up, expected life expectancy on a heart transplant would be 9.16 years. Preparedness, as Dr. Joe Walsh once said, the ones who live the longest are the ones who live the farthest away from doctors. I can see that. I can totally see that. This I thought was interesting. And since it just came up, Kaslinka kind of alluded to it a little bit there, talking about the nurses being allowed to give people jabs in public schools, which surprises me, actually. And this is on Today, and it says young people are more likely to die of heart attacks post C virus study finds. But why? Why is that? I don't know. Why do you think? Preparedness says, oh, I'm sorry, I already read that. Let me skip over. Kaslinka said, yes, we are rural. It's a country nurse who travels between 3 towns throughout the week. All right, that's kind of different. That's a very different situation. And Zane says you should also take care of yourself. Yeah, that's real healthcare. That's real healthcare. Let me dump this ad from Start Today. And this is one that's been coming up a lot recently, especially after now LeBron James's son had a heart attack during basketball practice. He's just a kid. Why are all these kids having heart attacks post C virus? Gee, I wonder why. And it says when Demi Washington, a basketball player at Vanderbilt University, came down with C virus. I can't say it. I've been warned not to by YouTube. In late 2020, her symptoms were mild, just a runny nose. But to ensure her safe return to the court, the school required her to undergo an MRI. The results brought Washington to tears. Following the infection, the new college graduate developed myocarditis when the heart muscle becomes inflamed, which can decrease the heart's ability to pump blood. The condition can lead to stroke or heart attack. According to the Mayo Clinic, Washington was not vaccinated against the C virus at the time. That's surprising. I was scared because my internal organ, you're like, oh my gosh, I need that to live. Oh, wow. That sounds like a teenager. Like, oh my God, like I totally need my heart to live and stuff. I didn't really know what was going to come of it, how long it was going to take for it to resolve. Washington had to skip the rest of the 2020 and 2021 season. Now, are they trying to blame the heart problems on the C virus? Because the C virus has been around for a long time and people have had it before, and there wasn't heart issues associated with it necessarily. If you recall, even when they started first making a big deal about the C virus, if you went and you read a can of Lysol, it had that on the list of viruses that it could kill. Washington has since recovered and is back to playing ball. Her experience sheds light on the thousands of young adults infected with C virus whose health hasn't rebounded as successfully. Now, this isn't what I thought it was going to be, because what I'm hearing about is it says since the C virus pandemic began, heart attack deaths across all age groups have become more common in the U.S., according to a September 22 study by Siddharth Sinai Hospital in Los Angeles. I wonder if this is like propaganda, and they're trying to make it sound like all the heart attacks and strokes that young people have been having are because of the C virus itself and not because of the inoculations. People between 25 and 44 who saw a 29.9 relative increase in heart attack deaths over the first 2 years of the pandemic, which means the actual number of heart attack deaths were almost 30% higher than the predicted number. So the deaths are up 30%. Cardiac deaths are up 30% in young people. And they're trying to connect it directly to the C virus instead of to the vaccination itself, which is what people have been believing that it is. Zane says C messes with your heart and liver and lungs. I read up on it. And then they say it actually is delayed with the vaccine. Bam says it's obviously long flu. Fluke Man has said, I heard that even being a millionaire in the United States, medical care can bankrupt you if you are charged. What do you think to do to make it fair? Oh, there's nothing you can do to make it fair. You can get social medicine and get no care, or you can pay for it and pay through the nose. But be sure you know what you want to get. Be sure you actually want to be bothered with it instead of wasting your money on procedures that aren't going to work. Like, for example, a lot of times when you have joint pain, one of the procedures that they will tell you is that they want to fuse the bone. They'll fuse the bone together to relieve the pain. But if they fuse the bone, it reduces mobility. And you see a lot of this with people who have arthritis in their hands or their feet. It reduces mobility, which makes you weaker, which increases your level of pain. You would have been better off not having the surgery. Dragon says, none of us crazy conspiracy theorists who didn't get the jab seem to be dying suddenly. Must be our tinfoil hats protecting us. Yeah. And Bam says that explains why tinfoil prices are going up. Preparedness says John Campbell calculated the risk of death at around 1 in 35. Really? Didn't quite work out that way, did it? Monkey says, I remember a couple of months ago I got the C virus and literally it just felt like a mild cold with lack of taste for a couple of weeks. And Helter said, since the C word, there have been endless cases of young people 30 below with strokes, not drug-related and otherwise completely healthy. There's truth in patterns, and certainly no one's talking about it. Now, they don't want you to talk about it because then it's a conspiracy theory. And there's John. John has joined us. Thanks for popping in today. Yeah, I don't know how I feel about that, because that could be, yeah, Cougar says tinfoil will protect you. Tinfoil will protect you. And then Kaslinka said, yeah, it's called the flu. Yeah. I don't trust the science. Well, it's not that the science can't be trusted. It's the scientists that can't be trusted, because you have three camps. You got one camp that says it's this way, one camp that says it's that way, and one camp that can be bought to say this or that. So when they sit there and say scientists agree, what scientists? And where did their funding come from? I don't trust any of that. I really don't. Now here, I really don't. And Zane says it affects everyone differently. And Preparedness says, big problem is whose stats and figures do you believe? I don't think you can trust any of them. I really don't think you can trust any of them anymore. You have to make your own decision. Focus says, I don't believe in this in the C. I think all the symptoms people were exhibiting were due to heightened sensitivity to the 5G network. You never know, Focus. You never know. This one I think is interesting, and this is about light bulbs. Who's heard this? As we pull this up, and this is, where is it? The Daily Caller. The Daily Caller. Biden administration to start slapping fines on companies buying the wrong type of light bulb. The wrong type of light bulb. And this is important for a couple of reasons. Department of Energy is prepared to start imposing fines on American companies buying and selling most incandescent light bulbs, according to E&E News, after years of political and regulatory fighting over the status of incandescent light bulbs. The DOE is set to enforce light bulb regulations, which will cement the market dominance of LED light bulbs, according to E&E News. The Department of Energy can impose fines on companies involved in buying and selling incandescent bulbs, which are used in about 50% of U.S. homes as of 2020, according to the report. That's because those LED bulbs can give you a freaking headache. They used to give me a headache. I hate using them. The agency is permitted to impose a $542 fine upon manufacturers, importers, and distributors and retailers per each violation. Now that's important. That's an important point. So per each violation, that literally means per bulb. So if you have a case of 24 bulbs, that's 24 times 542. According to E&E News, the penalties could rise as high as millions of dollars for large orders of the incandescent bulbs. While previous regulatory efforts regarding light bulbs had not included retailers in their purview, the enforcement push will include retailers in its scope, according to E&E News. The Department of Energy confirmed last week that enforcement actions are underway, but it's presently unclear to what extent. So it's open-ended, which is even worse. Now, The big argument with the LED so-called efficient bulbs, which they're not, they're supposed to last longer. They don't really, in my experience. They burn out about as quickly as the old incandescent bulbs. Incandescent bulbs are more of a natural light. They're not as hard on your eyes. The LED bulbs, they can affect your eyes and they can give you headaches. People get migraines from them. But the big argument at the time when they first started pushing those bulbs was that they're all imports. Incandescent bulbs, for the most part, are still manufactured in the United States. So if you're going to impose fines to force companies to not purchase incandescent bulbs anymore, there goes the rest of a staple of American industry that began in this country, a legacy in this country, incandescent bulbs. There it goes out the window while we import more shitty LED product from China. So you're getting rid of an industry completely, forcing companies by fining them. And the incandescent bulbs are not really that energy efficient or safe. Monkey says people that said trust the science, they should have trusted the doctors back in the 19th and 20th century that said cocaine was considered medicine. Yeah. Or cigarettes are good for your health. Menthol cigarettes will help your lungs. That's why my mother smoked menthols, Cool 100s filtered, because her doctor suggested it. Yeah, I'm that old. Zane says nuclear war is getting closer and closer. It won't be all out nuclear war. It would be strikes if they did it. Individual strikes. Bam says LED happens to have radiation warning on it. Yeah, disposing of them is not, well, they're claiming to do this for the environment. Disposing of an incandescent bulb is a lot cleaner than disposing of an LED one that has all those chemicals and powders in it. Preparedness says in the UK, incandescent bulbs were phased out in 2009. And Zane says they predict we'll have nuclear war soon. And Dragon says, why is the government allowed to micromanage our lives? They need to stick to what they were hired to do and leave the rest of it alone, because they've been allowed to. They've been allowed to jam their foot in the door. And every year since, it's got worse. They got away with it a little here, a little there as the decades rolled on. And people want the government to regulate things to force their concepts on other people, to the point where now the government just wants to micromanage everything that we do. Helter says, I guarantee there are wealthy people stocked up on traditional incandescent bulbs so they never have to succumb to the miserable LED bulbs. Bam says LED will be mandatory starting next year here. And Preparedness says LEDs here now everywhere, including street lamps, which do not light the street in the same way. And Focus says LED lights cause photosensitivity, and the brain does not know how to process it. There was a rumor that LED lights were used at high levels to torment soldiers captured in war. I know when I used to work in convenience stores in Boston, because the ceilings are usually pretty low in there, and you're on a platform behind the register, so the light is actually pretty close. It used to give me a headache. By the end of my shift, I'd have a freaking headache every day. But on top of them not being healthy and being bad for the environment when you dispose of them, again, it kills an industry completely. It kills an industry completely. The incandescent bulbs are just healthier and cleaner to dispose of. But hey, let's kill another industry, shut down some more factories, and send that money and those jobs overseas somewhere the hell else. Because China's the one importing the majority of that. So, yeah, we're giving China more money. Isn't that amazing? Never could have guessed that would happen. Seriously. Actually, I could absolutely guess that. And Zane says switch to beeswax candles. Yeah, wish it was that easy. Eric Hill says LED frequency has an invisible flicker, which is destructive. And Helter says the tree huggers need more electricity so they can charge their electric vehicles. And pull up another one here. This one will be coming from Fox News. Cougar said pass LED light through fluorite, which converts it to UV to grow mushrooms in-house for vitamin D. I'll be taken out now for sharing this. Because the Biden administration has been great for trying to micromanage things. So here's the next one. While we're on that trip and pretending to care about the environment, because that's all it is. These people, these officials, these politicians, these activists, they don't give a damn about the environment. They care about putting themselves on a pedestal, and they care about making money, and they care about being important, but they don't care about you, and they certainly don't care about the environment. And again, this is Fox News here. It says Biden administration cracks down on another popular home appliance. So he's batting 1,000 this week. It says Biden administration unveiled a regulatory proposal late Friday targeting water heaters, the latest in a string of energy efficiency actions cracking down on home appliances. Great. They're trying to turn us into the UK. The Department of Energy, there it is, DOE. And anytime you see a 3-letter acronym agency from the government, you should be concerned. Said its proposal would ultimately accelerate deployment of electric heat pump water heaters and save Americans billions of dollars and vastly reduce carbon emissions. If finalized, the proposed standards would force less energy efficient but cheaper water heaters off the market. Again, there goes another industry, because a lot of those are manufactured in the United States as well. I don't think those heat pumps are made in the US. I could be wrong about that. Furthermore, while I've got my train of thought, they've been forcing the heat pumps in the UK, and there's a huge customer base complaint about the heat pumps. They don't work. They don't work well. The argument is that they don't produce enough. So if you need hot water, it's going to run out quick. And if it's cold, when the temperature reaches a certain point, the heat pump can't keep up anymore, and you freeze your ass off. People in the UK who are watching, have you experienced a heat pump? Please chime in on this. I'll read your comment. Today's actions, together with our industry partners and stakeholders, that's the key phrasing right there, improve outdated efficiency standards for common household appliances, which is essential to slashing utility bills for American families and cutting harmful carbon emissions. All right, you're slashing utility bills by forcing people to buy a product that costs as much as 5 times what, I mean, because you buy a water heater versus a heat pump. What is a heat pump? I think in US dollars, it's around 11,000 for one of those heat pumps. Again, correct me if I'm wrong. Unbelievable. This proposal reinforces the trajectory of consumer savings that forms the key pillar of bioeconomics, or Bidenomics. I'm sorry. I don't know where I got bioeconomics from. Flashback from college, I guess. Bidenomics. I'm so sick of hearing that mess. And builds on the unprecedented actions already taken by this administration to lower energy costs for working families across the nation. Forcing someone to purchase an expensive unit that's inefficient is not saving the money. It doesn't. Let me see if I can catch up on a few of these comments. Little says only one thing in the news today, congressional UAP hearing, you should watch it. And Dragon says not a single member of the administration is giving up on their appliances. Their policies are for us, never for them. That's true. It's for thee, not for me policy with all of these people, these big celebrities, these politicians, celebrity politicians, I like to call them, activists. They're not suffering at all. I'll never forget that Greta Thunberg with her mother sitting in front of the computer, doing like a live stream chat, and the chairs they were sitting in, they got called out for, cost more than 10,000 euros a piece. And Monkey says, I've been seeing more of the temps being hot and all jumping into climate change and all sounding like the temps never got that hot before in the summer. And that's not true necessarily either, because they have not been recording temperature for really that long that you can make a comparison for more than a few decades in some parts of the world. Preparedness says heat pumps are completely non-viable. They're too expensive and rely on good insulation standards. Okay. And Helter says Team Biden seems to think us peasants are all just overflowing with extra cash to completely refurbish our lives. Preparedness says the majority of houses in UK cannot meet the insulation standards, but they're trying to force it on everyone, aren't they? They have a standard of how many they're trying to push out on people, and they are very expensive, as I understand. And like I said, they don't work as well as they should. Because Slinka says, if it's on the news, I assume it's a psyop. I don't blame you. Monkey says Bidenomics, an economic idea where you waste much more than saving and pissing it away at some foreign conflict. Yeah, I can totally get where you're coming from. And Kaslinka said, same with the UFO crap. If there's a congressional hearing about it, it's a psyop. There's no UFOs. That's experimental aircraft or completely a hoax. There are some Christian groups that think it's demons. It's demons flying around, then it's a government cover-up. And I'm like, yeah, I don't think so. Overall, the Department of Energy projected the regulations, which are slated to go into effect in 2029, would save Americans about $1.98 billion while curbing emissions by 500 million metric tons over the next 3 decades. That's roughly the same carbon footprint as 63 million homes, or half all homes nationwide. I don't believe those numbers. You're not saving those bills. You're not saving $198 billion on bills if you have to pay for these expensive units, and then you have to compensate for their inefficiency. So you're not saving that money. As far as curbing emissions, it's going to require more electricity. So more electrical output will counterbalance those emissions. And again, the United States is not leading the world in carbon emissions like the media would have you believe. The biggest culprits are China and India. China and India and a lot of the surrounding countries where there's heavy manufacturing and slave labor employee practices. That's where you're getting the most emissions because they don't regulate it. They don't regulate it at all. Where are we here? Bam says, I did buy my chairs with tea light holders. Okay. Preparedness says, yeah, directive is by 2030-ish government targets. Yeah, we're going to help you by forcing you to do something that you neither can afford nor desire to do. And Sergeant Scroggs says more efficient devices for energy, basically more cost, and you're not going to save as they will just charge more for the energy. If you want to save, go off grid. Yeah, and that is true because the energy costs will go up because they'll increase the taxes. And a lot of places don't even show you a printout of if you even get an energy bill and they don't email you something. It's difficult in a lot of places to find out how your payment breakdown actually looks. How much is actually energy? How much is actually services? How much is actually maintenance? How much is taxes? How much is regulations? They don't give you the breakdown anymore in a lot of places. So you know what you're spending on what. You don't know what you're spending on what anymore. And Scrogg says, of course, get rid of fossil fuels and watch electric rates rise. Yeah, because they got to get it from somewhere. And a lot of the ways that they produce electricity are inefficient. That's just another kick in the teeth for the American consumer. And all over Europe as well, as they're trying to push that in Western Europe, I should specify. Preparedness says, reported today, utility company remotely charges customers electric tariff with no consultation. Yeah, and also if you don't have, there's other ways they screw you over. Like if you have the smart meter, those are not cheaper. If you don't have the smart meter and it's a smart meter zone, they charge you extra for not having it. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous the way it all works. Cougar says CO2 is good. Ask any living plant. The so-called scientists that push the CO2 is bad. They have the IQ of a bowl of cat food. Oh no, they're very smart. They're very smart, and they're getting well paid for their opinions. And that's the key phrasing right there. Like I said, there's three kinds of scientists: the scientist who says it's like this, the scientist who says it's like that, and the scientist who says, how's my funding? It can be this or that. I'm willing to work with you. And those are the ones that work for these governments. When they say scientists agree, yeah, they're scientists, they're paid scientists who got their funding from your tax dollars. And BAM says here fuel and alcohol tax are 80%. Remind us where you are, BAMs. I'll read it off for everybody. Monkey says, what about nuclear? Just curious, since I've seen some people talk about using nuclear energy. It's efficient, and it's the problem with it, though, is if anything ever did go wrong, well, I mean, you remember Chernobyl, and it can contaminate an area for extreme long periods of time. Also, the materials that are disposed of from nuclear plants are thousands of years before going inert, and they have to be buried deep in the earth. Most of it gets transported by train out to Nevada and buried deep in the desert, because the U.S. government owns about 90%, or no, 80. Is it roughly 80% of Nevada is owned by the federal government, and they bury a lot of that out there. So there's long-term problems with nuclear energy that nobody addresses because they don't care, because it's not an immediate problem. It'll be someone else's problem in the future. Preparedness says, when you hear the word smart, avoid and question why. The trick with smart devices is they call it smart because they think you're stupid. Think about that. And BAMS reminds us they are in Finland. They are in Finland. That's an insane amount of taxes. It's frightening. Preparedness says, I prefer a nuclear option. Yeah. Prefer a nuclear option. If they had a safe way to dispose of it, they could put it on the moon, but you remember what happened in Space 1999. Some of you will get that reference. Some of you will get that reference. See if anybody picks up on what I'm talking about there. Yeah, Monkey says smartphone. Smartphone. Yeah, that smart ass phone, really. Again, they call it smart devices because they think everybody is a moron. Smartphone, correction. You're stupid, so you need a smart device. And that's where we are. As I look for the next story here, Zane says the nuclear option means no more safe food for 100 years. You can always grow mushrooms. And it depends on your hemisphere, too. Keep in mind, if you take a look at the global demographics and the countries that are in opposition where a full nuclear strike would be concerned. Like I said, I doubt there would be ever a full one, maybe isolated strikes, but a full-on nuclear strike, it's going to be primarily Northern Hemisphere. Most of the Southern Hemisphere below the equator would not receive a direct strike of any kind. So if you're on an island south of the equator, you might be all right. Bam says avoid smart devices. And Zane says shroom soup. And that they're going to move to Chile. Yeah, I don't blame you. Bingo says, I heard some numbers just today that America is number 2 in fossil fuel production, but number 14 in the world for export. So is this a big scheme to sell fossil fuels on the global market for higher prices? That's what ended up happening with the oil reserves when Biden released it. When Biden took over and oil prices started to rise suddenly, go back and look at the numbers, because during Trump it was down. During Biden, it started to creep back up. During Obama, it was way up there. And we had a dip with Trump, and we had a rise with, of course, Biden. Not their fault, really, we swear. But when people were really whining about it, two things were done that were okey dokes. The first one was a lot of states, they reduced one of their fuel taxes in that state to so-called give drivers a break. And it gave people a break at the pumps of about 10 to 15 cents a gallon. All right. What they did, though, was they tacked on in most counties in those states an additional sales tax to cover the difference. So you didn't save anything. The other thing that happened was Biden released the oil reserves, which you are never supposed to do. The oil reserves, the function of the oil reserves is for military emergencies. That's the primary function. Our oil reserves are so that we can keep our Air Force in the air in times of war to protect the country from being invaded. Not to lower gas prices, which it did not do, because when it was released, the oil companies purchased it and then transported it overseas. They sold it to China, they sold it to India, they sold it to Indonesia, they sold it all over the place, but it was not used here. So we didn't save again. So it was a lie. So even if we stop using fossil fuels, the countries that are producing all the pollution, that have no regulations on their manufacturing, like China and like India, will need even more oil and coal, and we can just sell it to them instead of selling it to ourselves. So yeah, bingo, you got a nail hit on the head there. And Rodney in New Zealand made a $10 donation to the channel. Thank you very much, Rodney. Very much appreciated. Again, goes a long way towards helping our strays. As you can see, for those of you who can see, there is Daniel. There is Daniel sitting in the chair. See if I can get a close-up on Daniel. I'm trying. I got a little button. Oh, now I lost him. But you saw Daniel there, I think. Daniel, thanks you. I thank you. Very, very much appreciated. As always, he says, staying away from the big cities sounds better all the time. Absolutely. If you can. Not everybody can do that. I talk about a lot of that on the Prepping channel, Prepper University, because, of course, I'm broadcasting on both Prepper University and Coffee Talk, or Coffee Talk Live on YouTube. And I talk about that a lot on the Prepper channel, that, I get it. A lot of people, they can't get away from the city. It's just not that easy for everybody. If everybody could pick up and go, half of them would be gone. Half of them would be gone. Bam says you need to start going off grid if you want to survive what seems to be coming. It would be a great option if we could do it. Now, moving along to the next topic of discussion here, as I pull up the broadcast, and this is from, what is this from? It's Traffic, I guess, is the name of this. Is it Traffic? Because this is local news. This is local Georgia news. It says Alive News Traffic. So I'm not sure if it's a specific Atlanta-based news agency or not. I believe that it is. Georgia to explore mileage-based user-free system in pilot program. And the reason I think this is interesting is, one, if they are successful, or if at least they can make it look successful on the paperwork, it'll set a precedence for the rest of the country. And two, it exposes the true function behind one of the fuel taxes that we pay. And I don't think most people realize how much tax is really involved when you go to the gas pumps. When I used to work for Cumberland Farms in Boston way back in the 90s, the the real money was made in the store. Actually, the soda fountain and the coffee machine made more money than anything because you were only paying for the cup. The cup cost more than the coffee. The cup cost more than the soda. To fill that, I think they said the cup cost them about 6 cents a piece, and the soda was less than that. So when you pay a buck for the soda, it's almost all profit. But at the pumps, they were making, and again, this is in the 90s, but from my understanding, they were literally only making like 12 cents a gallon, Cumberland Farms. And the rest of it was all fees and taxes. So, you're paying $2.50 at the pump. That store may be getting less than 20 cents for it. It's insane. But this is interesting as I read through this. Transportation officials are looking to the future when it comes to roadway funding. Oh, there's a fraud. Two biggest frauds in state taxes: money that goes to schools and money that goes to infrastructure. Okay. Atlanta, the Georgia Department of Transportation is about to launch a federally funded pilot program to study a user-free way to fund transportation. Director of Policy and Government Affairs Joshua Waller presented to the State Transportation Board a mileage-based user fee, MBUF, pilot project set to roll out across the state later in 2023. This is nothing but evil. MBUF charges drivers for the numbers of miles traveled, not for how much fuel they purchase. Since the early 1900s, and here it comes, road usage has been measured with a fuel tax. The more miles you drive means more stops at a gas station. The tax on the fuel is considered a fee for the miles you drive. And a lot of people aren't aware that that's one of the taxes that you're paying. A lot has changed over the last 9 decades. Automakers are building more fuel-efficient vehicles, including hybrid models. The demand for electric vehicles has steadily been increasing in recent years. As drivers find themselves making fewer stops at the pumps, transportation officials are looking at different forms of transportation tax to continue funding road projects. During the recent State Transportation Board meeting, board members acknowledged we can't continue to rely on a fuel tax for adequate funding. I don't think we have a choice. We're going to have to go to a user fee-based system, Kathy Williams, a board member, said. So basically, they don't feel like they're squeezing enough money out of the fuel tax. So they want to tax your odometer instead of taxing you at the pump, because too many vehicles are fuel efficient. How dare they? How dare they? Thank Biden, because he wants everybody to drive an electric car. Oh, lady says Sinead O'Connor died. Really? I had not heard that. She wasn't that old either. Sinead O'Connor was an activist at the wrong time. She was, because I totally understand and respect what she did on Saturday Night Live, and I was watching that night. When she did it. But it was the wrong time for it, and people did not understand what she was doing. Dragon says taxing people more for something they already pay tax on is not a good way to incentivize less driving or anything else for that matter. No, but what choice have you got? Because they just vote for it, and it just is. Rodney says we have the equivalent of MBUF here in New Zealand. Road user charges RUC. If you have diesel, you get charged RUC, and it's about to be added to the electric cars also. That's ridiculous. And Zane said, who is that? Sinead O'Connor. It's a singer. She sang Nothing Compares to You. She was really huge in the 80s until she was on Saturday Night Live. And when it was really live and wasn't preempted, and right after she sang her song, she sang a song a cappella, and very few singers can actually do that and get away with it, and pulled out a picture of the Pope and said, "Fight the real enemy," and tore it in half. And then they went black and then cut to commercial like 10, 20 seconds later. And people didn't understand that what she was protesting at the time was the Vatican covering up child molestation by Catholic priests. and they attacked her for, oh, you tore the picture of the Pope. They didn't know what she was doing. Nowadays, she would have been hailed for it. And it ruined her career. It ended her career. Helter says that tax will directly hit road users within and outside the state they travel through. Yeah. And Preparedness says, yeah, we paid road tax here and over 70% tax on fuel. They're just trying to price everyone off the roads. Hey, get ready for your 15-minute city. Because Slinka said, now I have to look that up. I'm not old enough to know what she did. Yeah, look up Sinead O'Connor Saturday Night Live, and you'll find it. And they never rebroadcast that episode either. They kept that under wraps for years, and she was banned from NBC after she did that. Very bold in the 80s because she knew it would cost her, and it ended her career. And she was huge in the 80s. She was big. She was like Annie Lennox. Bam says it's meant to cause more control. True. And Zane doesn't like the Pope. Neither did Sinead O'Connor, and she had a legitimate reason because they were like I said, they were covering up molestation by Catholic priests, and she was wise to it and used her fame as a platform to expose it, and it destroyed her career. Tyrannicide, I believe it was her protesting that the Vatican didn't allow female priests, and I think the song she sang was Bob Marley. Are you sure? I thought it was because of the Catholic priests and the children. Now I'll have to double check that. Zane says martyred for the children. Yeah, I'll have to double check that now because I had not heard that before, that it was because of female priests. I'm not sure about that one. Let me see if I can find it real quick here. That's confusing. I'll read you what it says in the post really quickly here because I don't want to be quiet for too long. If I can get it pulled up. And there it is. That's the New York Post talking about a Sinead O'Connor, and this is an older article. The event occurred in October 1992. Let me see. While on stage, while performing on NSL, the stunt got the Grammy winner exiled from NBC for life and booed off stage at a Bob Dylan tribute. O'Connor, now 54, said she had torn up the photo to protest sexual abuse of children by the Catholic Church. Okay, maybe that's why she shaved her head, because of female priests. But here it is. O'Connor, now 54, said she tore the photo to protest sexual abuse of children by the Catholic Church. So I was right the first time. And Kaslinka said she struggled with suicide and her son killed himself not too long ago. Wow. That's unfortunate. It's very tragic. A lot of people live very tragic lives, even famous people. It's incredible. But with that, yeah, Zane says, what a legend. And Preparedness says she turned Muslim. She got real weird in the 2000s. I don't know what happened to her, but she got really weird in the 2000s. And Zane says she was truly selfless. And that she was. I don't know what happened to her after the year 2000, because she did get kind of crazy. But like I said, to my recollection, and apparently confirmed there, that she had done that to protest molestation. Oh, I know, Stacy, I'm about to sign off too. Sorry I missed it, but it should still be saved. So if you wanted to go back and look at it, and she says, I hope it was a good live. So do I. So do I. I try to keep it interesting. I try to keep it interesting. Tyrannicide maybe says maybe the female priest thing was a cover so she could get the essay issue out on the front line. Remember back then there was a public statement about female priesthood, perhaps a PR cover up. That's possible. And Helta says the unfortunate overreaction of her tearing up the Pope's picture on SNL derailed her career, but she was definitely a real trailblazer in the world of music. Yeah, at that time, she definitely was. But with that, I'll go ahead and sign off. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. And hopefully, we will get an opportunity to do this again. Hopefully, I didn't get in too much trouble. We will see. So, thanks, everybody, and good afternoon.